Hi, it's Jen from Shabby Fabrics back with foundation paper piecing. It is now October, and I bet you're not surprised that I couldn't resist a pumpkin. But wait, there's more, as they say, because I'm always torn when it comes to pumpkins. Is it a pumpkin or should it be a jack-o'-lantern? So we have a fun option for you for the very first time here, depending on whether you like the pumpkin and carry this all the way into November, or if you're like, I love my little jack-o'-lanterns. We have put inside your kit, this is an amazing value. Our kits are just fully comprehensive. We'll go into what you can expect in your kit. Prefused laser cut applique. So if you're like, oh no, my little pumpkin is going to be cute little jack-o'-lantern. I mean, this is cute, right? This is absolutely adorable. So that's an option for you. We'll talk about that a little bit later on, but I couldn't resist revealing what I've been just actually smiling about, waiting for this moment to be able to film that and show you whether you want a pumpkin or jack-o'-lantern. You have the choice. It'll be in your kit. And if you don't want that jack-o'-lantern base, maybe put that aside later on when you do another project. Maybe you want to make that a jack-o'-lantern. So just like we've been doing all throughout this entire series, your kit is so comprehensive. You'll be getting a full color pattern showing you exactly the fabrics that are in your kit. So you're making sure you're identifying those, knowing, okay, that's that one, and I've got two greens. You're defining which ones those are. You can see the two different greens that I chose in there. I had a lot of fun choosing the fabrics for this one. And of course, we know what that's like with foundation paper piecing. Most patterns are not to scale. You have to go out. You have to get foundation paper yourself. You have to go Xerox this. And really, for a lot of people, maybe they don't live someplace close where they can just go get that done. Maybe they don't have a kind of scanner printer where they can do that. So just like we've done, you will get the Carol Doak foundation paper, 2 sets of that. So you could practice with one with some scrap fabric, and then save the other set for your kit. Or if you're a pro by now, which I bet you are, use one set for this, and then maybe use your scrap fabric and make another to give as a gift, my favorite thing to do. We know our customers love the time we take to create the stickers. And if this is all brand new to you, go back when we kicked this series off with our April project with a beautiful tulip, and we really break all this out in the importance of staying organized when you're doing foundation paper piecing. How does it even work? It's a really fun, non-intuitive craft type of quilting, I should say, that I was at first like, I don't know about that. And then I quickly fell in love with it. And you can see we just keep going with this. So that's what you can expect in your kit. Of course, all the fabrics, your cute little jack-o'-lantern face as an option, your backing, it's all included in that kit. Today, what I'll be focusing on is actually about something called fussy cutting. I could not resist adding in that plaid border. And you can see that that border is very straight. Sometimes when you get plaids, they kind of tend to veer off. You're like, how do I deal with that? Because nobody really wants a plaid to be crooked. So I'm going to talk to you about fussy cutting. I'm also going to talk to you about what happens when my block isn't at the size it's supposed to be. Patterns are based on perfect mechanics, right? They're based on a theory of what size a block should be. But as we sew, press, maybe we took a little bit of a bigger seam allowance. Maybe we didn't completely press a seam open. Sometimes our block can be a little bit smaller, as ours is today. So I want to show you how to deal with that and let you know to put your mind at ease. It's okay. It's a cute little wall hanging. It's a cute little table stand. If it's short by a 1/2 inch all the way around, nobody cares. The point is it's something fun to make, and don't let that ruin the joy of creating. I would say that many of my quilt blocks along the years, including today, come out just a little bit short, and that's okay. Don't let that ruin your fun. Let's talk about fussy cutting. What does that mean? It's just like I said, it's being very intentional about cutting the fabric. We're not just going to line that up on the mat and make us cut. We're going to let the fabric drive what we do. So we have our plaid here that I could not resist, this darling plaid from Riley Blake. and you're going to iron that out. Try to not distort that, because that can happen sometimes in your desire to get everything pressed out. A fairly straight plaid can start to become wonky because of how you iron it. Keep in mind you're pressing it, not ironing it with a lot of lateral action that can distort it, especially when it's wet. So our pattern has us cutting our borders to 1 3/4, and there's 2 for the side, 1 3/4 by 9.5, and 2 that are 1 3/4 by 12. Here's what we're going to do. We're just going to cut some borders. The borders are going to be what the borders are going to be. Let's look at our piece foundation unit so far. And again, if you're like, but wait, you skipped over all the steps to make that. That's what was talked about in our earliest videos when we kicked this series off with the tulip. We went into some more detail with the next one, which was the rose. Check those out if this is completely new to you, where we talk about how foundation paper piecing works, how the add a quarter rulers work. That's a very important piece and the required element to make the project. But as we look at our project here and we measure it, which technically should measure 9.5 inches, if, again, everything was perfect. And it's just a little bit short by about 1/8 of an inch, both on the top and the bottom. Why is that? For all the reasons I just spoke about. But I think here, because of all the seams coming together, all the thread coming together, this confluence, I could try to stretch this and distort this and get this to 9.5. I don't think that's important to do that. So what are we going to do instead? We're just going to cut our borders very intentionally. We'll make sure that we're cutting them along the line of our plaid, and let's make sure that we're cutting to at least the length that we would need. So let's see what that length is here. That is about 11.5 inches. So we know we can get our 2 side borders from here, or we can just cut everything along this way. Doesn't matter, right? I'm just going to take this long side. I want you to see how this works. The longer the run, the longer the distance, the more the veering happens. Here's something I learned along the way. There's less distortion with a plaid and a gingham if you cut along the selvage. It just is. I've found that to be true on nearly every fabric we ever get that's a gingham and a plaid. So if you're really struggling with something, if this distance will work for you, and notice this is my selvage, let's go this direction. And the closer I get to the selvage, notice how there's no variance here. It's when you get further away from the selvage that things can start to change. So I'm just going to start off with cutting a nice line here. With my plaid, my line, I'm not lining up at all on my mat. The mat is only to protect my blade, right? I'll cut across here. Now let's look at our ruler. I've got my 2 inch and I can see that line is my 1 3/4. Now the ruler comes into play. We do want our borders to be the right size. So we have our first border strip, and you just continue. We've established the line, measure over the 1 3/4, and we know these are way longer than they need to be. That's okay. You have plenty of fabric in your kit, and you just continue on. I'm going to cut 2 more. What's going to happen next now is we're always going to do the side borders, and you can see, before I even cut those other ones, you can see this is way more fabric than I need. You can now kind of figure out where you want to have that. You can either leave that in one piece, or I like to say, you know what? I love this plaid so much. I'm just going to cut this off and kind of put this in my stash. That's what I like to do, is less fabric kind of flopping around on the side. I'll do the same thing here. And next we'll be placing these right sides together. I might as well just talk about it since I've kind of started that journey already with you, because it's really the same with the top and bottom border, but we will sew all of this on together. I have a choice now. Do I want to pin this on and sew this from this side or the back side? While it's lovely to not have any seams to look at, the problem with letting the seams all be on the bottom is I can't keep track of them, and we don't want to have a rolled seam. So as much as it'd be a lot more fun to sew on this side, we want to keep track of these seams. We want to know where we are with this. So for that reason, we will flip it over, sew on this side. We're going to pin. I've got what's called the purple thing, because I can see right away that when I start sewing, that seam right there might want to flip. And what this does is it keeps my fingers out of the track of where that pressure foot is coming. I have been tempted, and I've been nipped a few times putting my finger there, and I didn't take it away fast enough. So this little just a few dollar item keeps your hands and your fingers safe while that's holding that down while the presser foot's approaching. I'll definitely be using that. So we'll just pin all the way down, both sides. You want to still be sewing with a good 1/4 inch seam allowance. So I'll pin these on, and I will meet you over at the sewing machine. So I have my seam guide on here helping me stay true. This is the diagonal seam tape again, helping me just kind of a visual aid to get lined up. We've got plenty of our border fabric extending above and below the edge of our block, and we're going to sew with a 1/4 inch seam. So we'll have our, of course, borders pressed to the outside. And I definitely want to get both of these on. I want to show you how we manage that, again, when the quilt block is a little bit smaller than it needs to be. Now, one thing I want to say is there are times, depending on the quilt project you're working on, where the block has to come out to be the right size, especially if you're doing maybe a block of the month. There's sashing, there's other things going on. There are tips and techniques we can do to try to help increase the size of a block. There's something called easing in. We can perhaps take less than a 1/4 inch seam allowance. None of that's needed right now. It's a cute little individual wall hanging. None of those extra steps are needed. So we're just pressing to the outside. And look how lovely that is. Look how nice and straight the border is. So let me get this other one sewn on as well. And then we're going to talk about trimming this up because we obviously have extra fabric hanging over. I'll be right back and we'll talk about trimming up. So we have our side borders sewn on. So let's talk about this. You really want to try to average that. The block that we have right now, if I lay this like this, you can see it has a little bit of a crown there. I like to kind of take an average, I would say. I'm lining up here. We know that's square. This is running along the top. Whenever you make a block that's a little bit smaller than it needs to be, you kind of like find the average. So I'm going to say that's our average. And I can see that right here, that's okay. I'm still going to lay my border strip on here. And when I sew my 1/4 inch, we're not going to see this gap right here. That's okay. Let's do the same thing down here where we're trying to figure out where's a good average where it's riding along that block. We don't want to trim away too much of that grass area. We want that in our quilt block. I think that's a really good spot. It seems square. All right. Now we place our other borders on, keeping in mind that we know right there's going to be just a little bit of a divot. I want you to see that. We know that. We're accepting that. And we're going to be not letting that ruin our day and just acknowledging, hey, a pattern is one thing. But when you have this many seams coming together, this much thread coming together, this much pressing, things might get off just a touch, and that's okay. All right, I'll pin this one. Let's look at the other side. Again, this is the one that has a little bit of a divot right there. We can see that. That's all right, and it's all going to come out perfectly here in the end. Perfect enough for us, I would say. Okay. Again, I'll sew from this side so I can keep my eyes on those seams. We'll use the purple thing to keep our fingers safe. All right, press to the outside. We'll square up the other two sides. Get that pressed out. I'm so excited to talk about that jack-o'-lantern face and give you some ideas of probably when I would put that on if that was the option you decide to take. This plaid, I could not resist that plaid. Now, I noticed something. This is a great talking point. You know, we plan our video and then it happens, and sometimes, just like real life quilting, things pop up. What I noticed is if I had been more intentional about how I placed this plaid on, I could have potentially, because we had longer strips, moved this so that these would be in line with the squares below. So there's something I could have done there. Or you kind of go a little freestyle, like apparently I did, right? Okay, so we know we have a lovely line here, and we're going to line up with our project, our seam allowance right here. And we'll square this up. Let me scoot that over just a touch. Here and here. And then down below. And there we have our really cute block. If you decide to add the jack-o'-lantern face, you could iron it on now. Of course, it has the fusible webbing on the back, and stitch it down with a black thread. Or what I think would actually be cuter is to, just like we've done, you have your batting, you have your backing. And as you can see from our project, we didn't do any machine quilting until the batting and the backing were there, so it looks embossed. If you go ahead and put the jack-o'-lantern face down now or later, don't stitch it down until you have the batting and the backing, and you're kind of stitching right along the eyes, the nose, and the mouth. It'll look embossed if you wait until you have the batting and the backing on there. So we would love to get your comments. You know, I never know if people are like, no, I love my jack-o'-lantern. Like, no, people are like, no, I want my pumpkin because I can take that into November. But keep in mind, there's another project coming your way. Foundation paper piecing is on deck for November. Thank you for giving me part of your day to show you how to fussy cut borders. And I'm super excited about that jack-o'-lantern option, and we cannot wait to read your comments. I'll see you next month as we continue our series.